Hey everyone, in this video we're going to touch briefly on what goes into a good introduction. We've already covered it a little bit in the proposal overview, so I'll just refresh your memory here and give you a few more hints as to how you can make sure you get all the information you need to hook your reader and to educate them on the topic. So, if you'll remember, there were three main parts to the introduction. The first part is the grabber, where you hook their attention. The background is where you get them up to speed on the topic so they know everything that they need to know in order to understand what you're going to talk about later in the paper. And the thesis statement is where you tell them exactly what this paper is going to accomplish. Now you need to do it in this order. You can't start giving them background before you've hooked them, and you can't tell them what you're going to do until you've given them enough background to understand it. So this is the basic order that you should follow as you lay things out. So let's talk briefly about these different parts. When it comes to the grabber, what we want to do before we do anything else is make sure that the reader cares about what you're talking about. We want it to feel like this picture where the hand is coming straight up out the page, grabbing them by the face and saying, hey, you have to pay attention. The worst way to start a paper is by giving us some boring cliched thing we've heard a million times before. A common problem in America today is abortion. For generations, people have been debating over gay marriage. These things are so boring. Webster's Dictionary defines marijuana as. Don't start your paper like this. I've read so many of those, and they are the most boring things you can possibly do. And so what do you think your reader is thinking when you start like that? If you start them off bored, are they going to want to buy into your proposal? Probably not. More importantly for you guys, if you bore your professor at the beginning, how do you think that's likely to influence the grade? When I think about it, if I start reading a paper and it's really great right from the get-go and I'm into it and I care, I'm like thinking A, and you've got to mess up or do something wrong for me to start bumping you down to a B or a C. You want me thinking A when I start reading. If you start with something like marijuana is, you're starting right at C and you have to like work your way up, right? So don't start at a C. Don't start with something boring. Hook the reader early on, make them care, and you're starting off with an A. So some things you might do for a grabber. A personal example. Say this particular topic that you're writing about has affected you in some way. You can give a story from your life, an anecdote that shows that it has actually had an influence on a real person, the writer of this particular paper. Showing that the issue affects real people makes it much more immediate, makes the reader care more. Same thing can be accomplished with a real life example. If something hasn't specifically happened to you, maybe it's happened to somebody that you read about in your research. So if you found something as you were doing your research that really grabbed you, chances are that it will grab your audience as well. So opening with that example can do a good job of hooking them. If you can't find an actual example, a real life one or one that happened to you, you can make one up in a hypothetical example. What a hypothetical is it's something that didn't actually happen, but it could happen. Something like, imagine you're in this situation. By creating a hypothetical example that makes the reader think about the repercussions of some decision that he or she might make, you make a grabber that really hooks them and makes them care about what's going on. So examples can work really well. Same thing can happen with shocking statistics. If you show a stat that people read and are like, whoa, I had no idea, well then that's the kind of thing that makes them want to keep reading. If we read, for example, that half of Miami is going to be underwater by 2100 if we continue to release carbon into the atmosphere at the same rate. Well, that's a whole lot of Miami underwater. A million people probably displaced. And if it's happening in Miami, think about what's happening in the rest of the world. Well, that's the kind of shocking statistic that can make people go, okay, this is a real problem. I want to read on. Make sure the statistic is shocking. If you say something like by 2100 sea levels will have risen by ½ an inch, people aren't going to be impressed and are not going to want to read on. So if you find a statistic that really wows you, that's a good way to open it. You can ask a question or start your paper with a quote. Those can potentially work well as long as you respond to them. If you open with a question, for example, a hypothetical question, make sure that you answer that question. If you open with a quote, make sure that you still use a quote sandwich. Let us know who said the quote and what it has to do with your paper. So, you've hooked the audience. The second secret word of the day is whale. Once you've got them hooked, it's time to move to the background. Remember that the idea here is educating your audience, making sure they know everything they need to know about the topic in order to understand your argument and later your proposal. So let's say we were talking about something like the Electoral College. Well, that has become a big issue again, just like it was in 2000, because our president won the Electoral College while losing the popular vote. So a lot of people might argue that something needs to be changed, and you might even come up with a proposal of what we could do instead of the Electoral College. Well, before you can start making that argument that it needs to be changed and laying out that proposal of how you're going to change it, you need to make sure we understand everything we need to know about that topic. So you give us history. Tell us about how the Electoral College got started, what its original intent was, and how it has worked over time. How it was initially meant to keep people like Donald Trump from becoming president, and it eventually shifted to the point where it was the very thing that caused Donald Trump to become president. How did that happen? It's important to understand the way that the college has changed over time. Technical information. How many states or how many votes go to each state? How are they divided up? Or how do we determine how many votes each state gets? And so on. This kind of information is useful to know in order to understand basically the nuts and bolts of how the Electoral College system works. If you're going to propose a change later, we need to know how it currently works so that we can understand the change that you're going to suggest. We would also need to know where different people stand. There's people out there who think the Electoral College is great. There's people out there who think it's bad, but it's the best system we can come up with. There's people out there who think maybe we just need a popular vote. People who think maybe we should have a, whatever they call it, proportional allocation of electoral points, where each person gets a percentage of the state's votes rather than winner take all. Some people think we should do it by congressional district. So there's a lot of different ideas out there of how things should be done. It's a good idea to touch on these so that we know where different people stand, so that when we see where you stand, it makes a little more sense. So all of these things will give us the background information that lead up to the thesis statement. Now, you want your thesis statement to do three things. First of all, it needs to be focused. Don't ramble, don't be vague. Tell us exactly what you're going to do and make sure it's clear. You can't have confusion or grammatical errors in the thesis statement. It needs to be straightforward and clear so that we can understand it very, very easily. And last, it should give a sense as to where the paper is going to go. We should know what you're going to accomplish over the course of this paper. So because your overall goal is to explain a problem and propose a solution, I suggest that your thesis statement do the same thing. State the problem in one sentence and propose a solution in a second sentence. In 2016, for the third time in American history, I think it's the third time, for the third time in American history, a president won the Electoral College vote while losing the popular vote. This is an unacceptable way to determine the leader of the country. Thus, I propose we replace the Electoral College system with my plan, which calls for X, Y, and Z. Now, I just came up with that off the top of my head, so it might not be quite as focused as the final draft would be, but that's why you get time to revise your thesis statement if you want and make it as clear and focused as you possibly can. This is basically a two-sentence microcosm of your paper, so you want it to say everything your paper is going to do in the most succinct and efficient way that you can. Okay, I think that's everything you need to know for the introduction. Remember, your job here is to educate the audience and get them set up for what's going to come next. So have a strong introduction, and you'll be on firm footing for the argument and later the proposal. If you have any questions, just ask.